That's right, folks. Another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Today, we're here to dive into a way too early Dynasty trade discussion. The joke is it ever too early to talk trades in Dynasty? Probably not. But pre-free agency, we don't know what's going to happen. Coaching changes. What's going to happen in the NFL draft? Well, we're going to talk about 5 running back sleepers for 2024 that you could potentially buy low starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. And that's right, folks. It's been a long time coming. In 2024, we had to start off the new year fresh. You know what? We took a couple months off. I decided that it's time to talk a little Dynasty. And to be honest with you, there's only like 3 people I could think of, and one of them is Richard Sickles. You can follow him at Gingerbeardman on Twitter. What's going on, Richard?
Not much. Just happy to be here. Good to be here with you, Bobby.
So, Richard, I woke up one day and I realized, like, I need a running back in Dynasty. And I'm like, who could I force to join me on a podcast to talk some Dynasty trade talk? And I honestly thought you were literally the first person that came to mind. And I'm excited to break down some 5. Now, we all know Devin Achane. We all know Jahmyr Gibbs. Even Kyron Williams now is the hotness. But there's some, RB2 guys that I feel like flashed a lot. We're going to break down some of them today. But just quickly, thinking of 2024, maybe a sleeper Dynasty running back, who's the first running back that comes to mind for you?
Honestly, I mean, we're going to talk about him, but the first one that comes to mind is Tyjae Spears. Like the expectation of what's going to be there, the fact that we don't know what's going to happen with Derrick Henry and everything like that. Like, I'm really excited to see. And the fact that going into this last year, before he was even drafted, I was already hyped up on Tyjae Spears. Like, I was excited for this kid to come in. So
you had some bias already going into
Yes, I did.
Yeah. That's literally the Dynasty community. Dynasty community will tell you this guy from Oklahoma State University of South Louisiana was awesome. And he was so good and then he went to Oklahoma for 1 year and he was like, that's the thing I love about the Dynasty community. They know shit that you couldn't even imagine about these guys. And when they have their guy and they start flashing, forget about it. Trying to get him from that guy is never going to happen. So if you are in a league with Richard and he has Tyjae Spears, don't even send an offer. It ain't going through. All right. So I actually lined up 5 guys. So I actually do have a running back issue in one of my Dynasty leagues. And I've identified 5 guys really because of a couple things. One, they have situations in 2024 that could open up big time playing time for these guys. The second thing is the eye test. They have flashed and they have looked good on the field. And the final thing is they have the metrics to back it up. So there is a lot of things going on heading into this offseason. So I brought Richard in really to kind of highlight what are the trades that we can make for these guys, whether it's picks, whether it's veteran players. And Richard's going to help us identify these guys as if you're a win now guy, or if you're looking 2 to 3 years down the road, maybe you should look at these guys as well. So we're going to have trades for everybody. If you're dead last and you're still rebuilding, one of these guys could be good for you. But if you're a championship contender, there's a guy on this list that you could turn it from an RB4 who could be your RB2 as soon as 2024. Let's get into the first one. It's Chase Brown. So Chase Brown, obviously, the coaching situation's great. There's going to be no changes there. Bill Callahan, the OC, has been getting some news and buzz as a head coaching candidate, but I don't think that's going to happen. The biggest thing for him, though, is that Joe Mixon is a 2024 free agent, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Chase Brown and that situation. But after week 13, we started seeing his touches go up. He averaged 8.8 touches, 8.2 PPR points per game on those touches. Now, I think the biggest question for him, though, is going to be, number one, if Joe Mixon leaves, is he good enough in pass pro? Do they trust him as a 3-down back? I guess, Richard, your thoughts quickly about Chase Brown, what his value is going to be for it. Is he a guy that you're trying to acquire right now?
I'm going to be honest, and I know I'm going to break your heart here. He's not somebody that I'm looking at.
I already hate you.
I know. It's game over. No, I did like a little bit of what I saw. I mean, week 14 against Indianapolis, he had that huge week, 19 points, I think it was like 3-5 points. But beyond that, outside of that, he never really broke the double-digit points again. He was averaging about 4.07 yards per carry. He was doing well in the pass game. I got to give him credit for that, and that's one thing that whether he ends up being the guy moving forward or if they end up going to a running back by committee approach, he should at least get some touches going forward. But it does make me a little bit worried that he was a 5th round pick. You have that draft capital aspect of it. And so I'm not exactly that excited about him. He's one of the guys I'm not all in on. I'll be honest.
Now, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that right now, when you're evaluating a situation, if Joe Mixon does leave with the
Yeah.
institution, they didn't really do much from a contract negotiation. They did throw incentives for him, and Joe Mixon looked good down the stretch. But if you look at number one of the things I like about Chase Brown, elusive rating, breakaway percentage, and yards after contact per attempt. He was inside the top 17 according to PFF, and all those kind of advanced metrics. He's also 89th percentile in 40-yard dash, speed score, burst score. So he has the measurables, combine measurables, but he also put it on the field as well, which I do like. And he also had the 93rd percentile college dominator his final season. So he has shown he could be a full-time workload. Now, the thing that worries me a little bit is his pass pro didn't grade too well. I guess my question for you, though, is I know you don't like him, but it doesn't seem like anybody likes him. So when I did some research, Dynasty trade charts, it looks like you could probably have him for a 3rd-round pick. So if you are currently looking for a running back and you could trade or offer a 3rd-round pick, do you think he's worth that? And if you are, let's say, for example, would you take a 3rd for Chase Brown, or would you ask for a 2nd, for example, a late 2nd for him?
I would take a 3rd for Chase Brown. If I was trying to trade for Chase Brown, I would probably be asking for, or I'd be trying to move a 4th. I like I said, I'm really not in on him, but
Yeah.
but if I have him and I'm willing to move on from him, I'd move on from him for a 3rd.
I love it. I love it, baby. All right. I feel like I already got one trade in the books. Hopefully nobody on my league sees this. By the way, I hope the guy who's in my league who has Chase Brown is more like Richard. And we don't even have 4th-round picks. So in that league, if you want to just do it for nothing, I would love every second of that. All right, let's get down to your guy. Let's bring some good vibes for Richard here. And let's talk a little bit about Tyjae Spears. Now, Tyjae Spears is in a very similar situation. Now, granted, we don't know what the future is for the head coaching job for the Titans. Mike Vrabel will be gone. I doubt Tim Kelly comes back as OC. Call it a hunch. I think Ben Johnson, the Detroit OC, is my personal favorite for that job because Will Levis, I think, does offer some hope for anybody coming in. They have that. He did flash some tools. Derrick Henry is a 2024 free agent, which I think it starts and stops there. If Henry does not come back, Tyjae Spears has a real opportunity to be a workhorse in that offense, pending on who comes in as the head coach in OC. After week 13, once again, 13.3 touches and 12.6 PPR points per game. So Spears really became a factor in PPR. But here's the best thing I love about Spears. Top 5 in PFF pass pro grades. That's how you stay on the field as a 3-down back. Richard, talk to me a little bit about Tyjae Spears, what you're willing to kind of offer for him. How aggressive are you trying to acquire him in Dynasty?
Yeah, no, and I think you hit it with the PPR aspect for him. He is definitely going to be somebody moving forward, whether he is the guy or not. He's going to be involved in the game because he is good at that pass protection. He's going to be involved in the passing game more often, things like that. So as far as his yards per carry, he's 4.53 yards per carry. So he showed that he has the ability to run the ball. He didn't really get much of a chance to do much with it, with Derrick Henry being back there and everything like that. But I do expect him to make a good push to be the starter in that backfield. And I honestly, I'd be willing to take a gamble. I'd trade a mid to late 1st for him.
Oh, wow. So you're going to say mid to late 1st. Now the question is, all right, now, do you view Tyjae Spears as a 2024 asset right away to where if you're a win now team and you do have that mid to late 1st, you're saying pull the trigger and get Tyjae Spears?
Yes. Yeah. If you can get Tyjae Spears away from the person that owns him, if you can convince them that especially with the draft class, something that we haven't talked about yet, but with the draft class that's coming out right now for running backs, if you need a running back, you're probably not going to find one in the draft class that's going to be a big piece for you right away. They're not going to be as detrimental, or not detrimental. That's not the right word, but they're not going to be as impactful. There we go. They're not going to be as impactful right away. So trading that mid to late first for Tyjae Spears, I think, would be the right move. Definitely.
All right. Well, I already lost the first and a third. We're only 2 players in. All right. So that's all. I guess another good question here is like since this is a guy you're aggressive on, I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about maybe if there is an aging running back on your roster. Let's say you have Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery, James Conner, those types of running back, even Eckler, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara, those names that come to mind. Would you be willing to flip one of those guys for Tyjae Spears?
I would. Oh, definitely. Well, outside of Saquon Barkley, I don't think that I think Saquon Barkley still has has better years ahead of him, has his best years ahead of him. But the other guys, I think that I would gladly in a heartbeat flip them for Tyjae Spears. I think, in fact, you'd probably have to throw in a kicker to be able to pry them away. Even with like a name like Eckler or something like that, you'd probably have to throw in a kicker like a 3rd or 4th round pick.
So you're saying right now that if you had Austin Eckler, if you have Spears and I have Eckler, I offer you Eckler for Spears, you would say I need a 3rd round pick with that.
Yep.
All right, we're off the rails, folks. We're off the rails. I love it. All right, let's move on. Now this guy is actually, I think, really showed a lot down the stretch, and
definitely.
This is if you haven't noticed a theme with today's show, the RB1s on these teams, by the way, are all free agents. So is Josh Jacobs and Zamir White. And I think Antonio Pierce, after what happened with Rich Bisaccia? What is the guy? I think Rich Bisaccia, the Raiders' former interim head coach, who led them to the freaking playoffs, and then they hired Josh McDaniels. I think that basically solidifies that Antonio Pierce will be back. He galvanized that locker room. Now, I don't know what that means for the quarterback and the offensive side of the football, but I don't think it matters because it can't get much worse. Aiden O'Connell was very up and down, and Zamir White still dominated. After week 15, when he became the starter, 24 touches, 15 PPR points per game, RB 15. So that's legit top 20 running back numbers there. So I guess my question, though, is what is Zamir White's value? How do you view him long-term? Do you think he's someone that you could be looking to trade for like a 2nd round pick or even one of those veteran running backs we talked about previously?
So I'm going to be fully honest. Going into the research on him, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to be looking at, and I'm kicking myself because I had several shares of Zamir White and I traded him away this last year. And after doing my research, I'm really kicking myself, wishing that I still had him on my team because down the stretch, he showed when Josh Jacobs went down and he was absent, he showed that he could be a lead back. He was averaging 4.73 yards per carry, 6.67 yards per catch, and he has the draft capital to say that he'll be back again. I don't think that he's going to have a whole lot of competition. They might bring in somebody to just to bring up some competition, but I think that he will put his name out there and he'll be the guy, I think. As far as what I think for picking him up now, just because we don't know what's going to happen with Josh Jacobs, I feel like there's a good chance that the team tries to bring Jacobs back. I think Jacobs wants to be there, so I'm a little hesitant on Zamir White, but I'd trade a mid to late 2nd for him.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what today's show, the way too early piece is, because that's where you're going to have to gamble a little. If Josh Jacobs doesn't come back to the Raiders and you traded a late 2nd round pick for Zamir White, you just stole him. However, if Josh Jacobs comes back, you just threw away a 2nd round pick, essentially, pending on how long Josh Jacobs signs for. Now, listen, they did not give him a contract last offseason. He was negotiating. He tried to hold out. Did not work. I can't imagine that they go all in on Josh Jacobs now, knowing what they have in Zamir White. Why would you pay Josh Jacobs when Zamir White was just as dominant over the second half of the year? So I do like the fact that you could now. I lost my first, second, and third round picks already in this, but I do say that Zamir White did show enough. Now the question is, how do you view him versus those aging running backs like Joe Mixon, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery types? I guess the question is, all right, James Conner looks sharp. How would you trade James Conner for Zamir White right now?
That'd be a little bit tougher. I don't think that I would. I really do like James Conner and what he's doing down there in Arizona.
I don't even know why I brought him up. I love me some James Conner. Love it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it either.
yeah.
But I guess like the question is like, it sounds like this is where the difference is. Like Tyjae Spears for you is like your flagship dynasty sleeper running back. That's where you'll trade these veteran backs for because you feel like 2024 he'll make an impact, but then 25 through 27 you're going to win out on that trade. Zamir White, you're kind of like, I don't even know like in 2025 if he's going to be better than David Montgomery necessarily. But that's a good point there. I think that's kind of where the line is.
Yeah, I honestly I feel like putting a pick into Zamir White would be kind of like making an investment. Like you're like moving on from the Josh Jacobs aspect of things and whatnot. You're hoping that down the road he's going to be able to help your team in 2 to 3 years. Like that's what you look at when you're playing Dynasty is a 2 to 3 year win now window, right? And so so I think that if you are looking at Zamir White right now, I think in the long run he is going to end up taking over. And I think that he will be that back that you want in the backfield in Las Vegas.
So I guess the better question then is if you are, let's say, a bottom 3 team in Dynasty right now, and you know that you're probably not going to win in 2024, would it make more sense to trade an Alvin Kamara for Zamir White if you know you have a better chance of competing in 25 and 26? Was that a trade you would make?
Certainly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I can, I was just gonna say, if I can move on from Alvin Kamara right now and pick up one of these guys, one of these younger guys, especially like Zamir White, yeah, I would do that.
And that, you know why that's a good idea? Because the next guy on our list is Kendre Miller. And that's what podcasting's all about, folks, by the way. Good transitions. We talk a little Alvin Kamara and then bam. One of the main reasons why, and by the way, I put Kendre Miller on this list and I actually tweeted this out like after week 18. Like Kendre Miller is legit. Like,
yep.
If you watch him play, the guy is very good. Like he just moves so good. He made Jamal Williams look like he was running with sandbags on him. It was ridiculous how good he looked. Now the only issue with Kendre Miller is that Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams are technically under contract next year. Now in 2026, technically Kamara's a free agent. In 2025, Jamal Williams. That being said, there are outs in their contract. So the Saints could theoretically get rid of both these guys this offseason. I doubt that happens, and not a lot of teams take that out. But that is what worries me about Kendre Miller, because Alvin Kamara, he's the likely successor to Alvin Kamara, the type of player he is, the role he can play in that offense. Now, Miller in college, based on what I saw, was a little bit more of like a grinder. He wasn't necessarily like the pass catcher Alvin Kamara was, but I guess you could kind of elaborate on that too. But if you look at the games where he had 3 games of 10 plus touches, he averaged 10.8 PPR points per game. So he showed that he could produce on a higher workload. Now, I guess my question for you is, do you think there's a role for him as soon as next year? And if not, I guess what's the long-term game here? If you're a bottom 3-4 team, what are you willing to offer to a team that has maybe Kendre Miller as their RB5 so you could stash him for 2025 and 26?
So, and that's actually one of the things that I wrote down in my notes was the fact that he kind of had a disappointing year dealing with some injuries. That's one of the problems with Kendre Miller, but also the fact that there was such a veteran presence on the team that he just wasn't needed. And so I think that he could take a step in the right direction. I think that they drafted him as high as they did in the 3rd round for a reason. I think they expect him to be the guy in the end of things. I think that you're right that the contracts, they do make you a little bit hesitant, but I think they're waiting to see how much health or how healthy he is, how ready he is to take over that backfield before they start to go with those outs. That said, I'd put in a mid-second for him. I'm sorry if you don't have any more 2nd round picks. I'd probably put
I'm out.
You're out of 2nd round picks. But I like if I had to choose between him and Zamir White, I'd be targeting Kendre Miller. I think if you're a bottom 3 team and you're looking more down the road to be able to compete long term, Kendre Miller would be the one that I'd be targeting.
and I think from a dynasty standpoint, this is the kind of stuff you have to think about, right? Like you have to take a real assessment of your roster. Like you kind of know if your team can make the playoffs and have a potential chance to win, and if you don't. And if you don't, like the question is how quickly, that's why I put up the running backs to talk about. There's also probably receivers we could talk about too, because you're not going to want to trade picks if you're a bottom 3 team. You want to keep your picks and also acquire young talent that could be good in the future. So you're going to probably look to trade an Austin Eckler, because I personally feel like, and maybe you could agree or disagree, but like if you're not going to win in 2024, honestly, I think if you have Eckler and the top 5 team in your league has Kendre Miller, that's a perfect trade scenario. Like here, I'll take Miller. You could take Eckler if you want to do some type. I think that in my viewpoint is, yeah, you're taking a little bit of a haircut in 2024, but in 2025 and 26, you're going to come out, and when your team's ready to win, you might have the future of your team as an RB1. The only thing I will say to kind of contradict that is what you said is perfect. This is a veteran. Derek Carr coming in, Dennis Allen, Pete Carmichael. Those guys are veteran guys. Like Dennis Allen's not like this new young head coach, and Derek Carr is like a young upcoming quarterback. These are win now guys. So I think Alvin Kamara is not going anywhere, and I think Jamal Williams will be back. So I don't think you're going to get much from Kendre Miller in 2024. But I guess final thoughts about Miller before we move on.
No, I think you hit it. He was actually another guy that I watched a lot in the draft process before the draft, and I was really excited about him. And then when he landed with the Saints, I was like, oh man, this is perfect. He could take over the reins from Alvin Kamara just in time. You just gotta wait it out. And sometimes in Dynasty, that's what you got to do, is you got to wait it out.
Yeah. So I think that's where I think if you're watching this video, if you're a bottom, team that's not going to win in 2024, and a team that's kind of maybe middle of the road, I honestly don't mind a slight overpay. If you're getting rid of a win now player like an Eckler type, if you pay, I think in a vacuum, I think it's an overpay if you trade Eckler for Miller, but I don't care about 2024. And honestly, if you do worse in 2024, guess what? You get a higher pick in 2025. So like I know it's a terrible way of thinking about it, but there's more nuance. If you're someone that watches this stuff and you do redraft, you probably think we're crazy, but for dynasty purposes, that's the big difference. So I guess my question for you is, I know we're picking on Eckler, maybe a guy like Aaron Jones even. Would you consider Aaron Jones for Kendre Miller? And Jones is older than you think, by the way.
Right.
He's like 28. I want to say he's 28 now. Let's see. Aaron Jones. He started in 2017. He's 29. He just turned 29.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that so I'm giving up Aaron Jones in this scenario for Kendre Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I would do that easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and I think that's if you feel like you're a bottom third of your dynasty league. If you're middle of the road, you have to make all right, so I got to admit something, okay? I'm relatively new to the dynasty world, but I kind of slowly becoming obsessed with it, which is a problem. I feel bad for Richard.
Is it a problem though?
It's not. I feel bad for Richard because he's going to get a lot of text messages from me from now on, because we're going to have a dynasty trade chart up on the site. But I wanted to bring this up because my thought process here is, if you are middle of the pack, like let's say you just missed the playoffs, I think you need to evaluate your current situation more than anybody else, because in Dynasty, yes, it's great to win that year, but if you can make moves to take advantage of people's win now mindset to be a top 3 team for a half a decade down the line, like you have to evaluate, are you one player away from becoming a playoff team to give you a shot to win? Or are you still not close to where it makes sense to maybe trade these Aaron Jones types to get Kendre Miller, to take a step back this season to get a better pick and get Kendre Miller down the line? Like, these are kind of things you have to think about in Dynasty. So definitely want to put Kendre Miller on the list. And another guy that I want to talk about too is Keaton Mitchell. Everything was like parting the ways. No, by the way, when you're looking at Keaton Mitchell, this playing time starts up. You're like, oh, this boy's he's got the juice. He's got Lamar Jackson, potential MVP. The Ravens, Ravens, they look awesome. Oh, and by the way, coaching staff, Todd Monken, everything's clicking. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, free agents in 2020 this season. Free agents. Awesome, right? We're all excited. Well, there's one problem. He tears his ACL. So now all of a sudden, this guy goes from one of the best assets in fantasy to what the hell we do with him. And that's what we're here to help people with, Richard. So stop asking questions and answer them, man. Okay? Tell us what we're supposed to do with Keaton Mitchell right now. Like, what's his value? What are you trying to do with him? Is he even on your radar right now?
He wasn't until I started doing some research for this, I'll be honest. He was another one that I started doing some more research on him, and I was like, you know what? I'm liking what I'm seeing. His 8.43 yards per carry, it's not sustainable. But he was still averaging 6.79, taking out the big game against week 9 against Seattle, where he had like three carries and he blew up for 100 and some yards. So he still is putting up awesome yards per carry. In the past game, he only missed 2 catches. So he's definitely somebody that can be a part of the passing game. The injury issue, I swear the Ravens are cursed. I don't know what else to say besides
Dude, their running back knee injury. Wild.
They really are
wild. It is wild.
Yeah. I feel so bad for him. I really do. But no, I mean, beyond that, yeah, I think that modern medicine has come a long ways. I'm not really worried about the ACL tear. I think that having that injury happen the way that it did and everything, I think that it will make it so that it's a little bit easier to secure Mitchell. And I think that you could probably get him for a late second round pick, late second, early third. And I'd be willing to pay that.
Here's the thing with Mitchell, right? This is another one philosophy question here. And I think the knee injury opened up a window for those kind of bottom third teams to acquire a really good asset again. Like, I think this is another player where if I am a bottom third dynasty team that's probably not going to go anywhere in 2024, this is an ideal player because, number one, the knee injury, he's not going to get a lot of buzz because he's not going to be practicing in OTAs and doing a bunch of stuff yet. But the question is, what are the oh, Jesus.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, my that makes me feel like someone's entering my home. Nah, it's just my dog.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Brought to you by Petco. I don't know. That was a terrible. Great plug. This my crazy dog barking. Brought to you by Petco. Anyway, so yeah, what I was saying though is like this is another one of those things where now because if you look at dynasty trade charts, he is okay. Here's players, by the way, he's ranked lower than in dynasty trade charts. Okay, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Curtis Samuel types. Like what? Doesn't make any sense.
No, yeah, I'm taking Mitchell.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, I guess Tyler Higbee, Devin Singletary. Like, I'm sorry if you have Devin Singletary on your dynasty right now, and the team that has Keaton Mitchell is like a middle pack or a team that's in the top half of your league. I'm offering them Singletary right now and saying, hey, here's a running back that you could probably use in your flex. And I'll take Keaton Mitchell, and I'll take a redshirt year with him. Now, I guess my question: do you think that's even possible?
I would be surprised. It surprises me that they're valued above him. The only thing that I can think of why he's valued below them is because of the fact that of the injury. But again, I don't think that injury is gonna hold him back. So yeah, if you have Devin Singletary and the other guy in your league has Mitchell, try to make that trade.
Yeah, I mean they have guys like Chuba Hubbard ranked higher than him.
Yeah,
and this is kind of and here's my thing, right? I get it to an extent. Like if you are a good team and you need Chuba Hubbard, I mean I shouldn't even have said that. I apologize. If let's say for example you need Devin Singletary was good. If Devin Singletary was like your second flex in your dynasty league that got you to the second round of the playoffs, I can understand that you would rather keep him than take a red shirt on Keaton Mitchell with the ACL. But that being said, like if Devin Singletary is like, if you're a below average team in your league, it makes no sense to keep Devin Singletary over Keaton Mitchell. Now, if you have to go up higher, like James Conner, we talked a little bit about, he's on these lists that he's like a little bit Roshan Johnson types, even Aaron Jones. I guess like let's go back to those guys. Maybe David Montgomery we haven't talked about. Like if you have David Montgomery, and let's say you're a bottom third team in your dynasty league, are you trading David Montgomery for Keaton Mitchell, or do you have to add in picks, and how would you do that?
I was just going to say, yeah, I would definitely be trading Montgomery for Keaton Mitchell. I think that I think I'd probably I'd probably throw in a third just to see if, like I said, I'd be willing to trade a late second for him. So I'd throw Montgomery and a third at my opponent and just see if they'd be willing to take that kicker.
So I think the other aspect of this though is, I think if you could have a serious, this is the other thing about Dynasty, is that you're not just talking about one season. You're talking about 3 seasons, 4 seasons. And for wide receivers and other positions, it could be a decade, right? So my point is, like, if this team, by the way, is a top 5 team, let's say they just got knocked out of the second round, and you have David Montgomery, they have a much better chance of making the championship next year with Montgomery than Keaton Mitchell. Right. And so that's their incentive. In a vacuum, yes, Mitchell, by the way, and listen, this is crazy to think that we have to tell the David Montgomery owner, who had like 13 touchdowns this year, hey, you should take David Montgomery for this guy who barely played and got an ACL injury. But in Dynasty, everybody's crazy. Everybody loves that 5-year down the road upside player. So it is a little more, and that's why we understand it's difficult to pry away these high upside assets that could be really good in 5 years. But like, if you're a win now team, like, and I'll say this from the other perspective, if you're a win now team and you can win the title this year, that's the most important thing to do. Go get a title this year,
right?
Because that payout is going to pay for your fee for the next half decade to plus. So go win. So I would say, if the person in your league is doing what we're saying, maybe you get the 3rd round pick. Be like, all right, I'll give you Keaton Mitchell, but I want Montgomery, and I want you to throw me a 3rd because you want Mitchell. So like, try to play it the other way too. I'm not saying but in the grand scheme of things, make the damn trade. I still think you should take Montgomery, fill out that second flex spot, go get the title next year, by the way, because the Lions are going to be good. I know Gibbs is a stud, but Montgomery has his role too. So I think there's other, and by the way, we don't even know if Mitchell's going to come back to full strength after the ACL. We have no idea.
Right. Yeah.
And what if they re-sign J.K. Dobbins and Dobbins returns and becomes good again? We don't know. So there's a lot of other factors. But any final thoughts, Richard, about any of these guys before we close the show?
I think one thing is you definitely you hit some really good key points about like the fact that like it depends on the person that you're trying to trade with and everything like that. You definitely need to play the person to play the game. As far as the players themselves go, these guys, like we've been talking about this whole time, they're guys that are going to help you in the long run. So if even if you are, say you're somebody that just won the championship, but you got an older team, this is the time to try to reset that with these guys.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
I think this is the perfect time for you for those teams to try to flip some of the guys that you just won with, like Eckler. Or, well, maybe not Eckler.
But I guess I'll let me kind of build off that, because I think this is a really good point you just made. I think if you just won the title, it might make sense to trade away your 1.112 for Tyjae Spears. And if you feel like your roster is the weakest right now at running back, and honestly, you're talking to me. I just won the title in my Dynasty League. I have 2 running backs on my roster. It's Kenneth Walker and Brian Robinson. After that, my RB3 is Jerick McKinnon. So you're talking to me right now. Honestly, it might make sense for me to trade that 112, because I know, like you just brought up, there's probably not going to be any running backs in this upcoming draft that I'll get at 112 that could be instant, game breakers. Maybe it makes sense to go trade 112 for the Tyjae Spears player. Maybe that's what I do to reinforce my running back position. So I love that thought too. What's your final thoughts about that?
No, that's exactly it. I think that if you just won and you can flip that 112 for Tyjae Spears and reset the clock a little bit, I think that you got to do that. I think that a big piece is the fact that this upcoming draft class, like I said earlier, and like you just said, it's not going to be as running back robust as what you're going to hope that it's going to be. And so if that's what you need going into next year to try to help win again, you're going to want to try to target somebody else right now, in my opinion.
And I got to tell you this too. I found it really difficult. Like unless you're in like a dynasty league with your boys from home, like I've joined a bunch of dynasty leagues where I don't really know everybody in the league. I don't have their phone numbers. Just trying to get trades done at draft day is nearly impossible. You know, so honestly, this is the time where you have a few months to figure out, okay, I already identified, this is what point of the show. We have identified 5 guys that you could go out, make some feelers for. It takes them a month to get back to you. That's fine. The draft's not until July or August. You're good. But that's really what today's show is about. It's really selfishly for me since I need to figure out my RB situation. But we'll be back again. I want to thank Richard, by the way, today for jumping on. We appreciate Richard. Tell the people what you got upcoming at Razzball and tell them about all the other writing opportunities you got going on right now.
Sure, yeah. So writing at Razzball right now. Actually, we have something in the works right now. I'm really excited to be able to talk about it, and I can't wait to be able to share it with everybody. But we're working on I'm working on a dynasty trade chart right now. Can't wait until everybody can see that finally. Beyond that, I'm also working over at NFL Lab Network and working with Fantasy and Frames. Just joined Fantasy and Frames, and I'm really excited about working with them too.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Gabe. By the way, it's Ginger BE3RD, man. Is that how it is? That's the Twitter handle. Go follow. I'm telling you right now, there is going to be a time 3 months from now. You're going to call me Nostradamus Bob. You're going to say whatever you want, Bob Stradamus, because I'm predicting in 3 months, the one person you're going to associate with Dynasty trade charts is going to be Richard Sickles, Gingerbread Man, how you say it on Twitter. Go follow him now. The Dynasty trade chart is going to be awesome. It's going to be the #1 tool in the industry. I guarantee it. We're excited to bring it for Razzball, and go check him out everywhere else. And by the way, if you have time, go check me out. Bobby LaMarco on Twitter. I'm pretty good too. I got some notes. I got some things going on up here, so it's fun. Hey, a little bit. All right, give me a chance. All right, just a little bit. All right, we're out of here. I can only take so much. We're out of here, folks. Thanks for joining. See you next time.